Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, August 18th, 2011. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week, Chris Colby, editor of Brew Your Own magazine, takes us on a tour of Belgian breweries and beer places. Prepare to be jealous. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. Also, you can find our brewers' logbooks to help you log and track 50 batches of beer. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. Also, you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james, and our show page on Facebook is at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us and click on our associate link first. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show, and we appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone and Android podcast apps on their respective stores, with bonus content this week, by the way. And we're on the BlackBerry podcast directory now, too. You may be thinking, where's Brad? Where's Brad Sturgeon? I plan to talk to Brad this week as a follow-up to the IBU experiment show from last week, but Brad's still got some work to do before we talk again, so we'll wait a week. And I appreciate all the questions that you guys sent in for Brad, and I've shared them with him, and I'm looking forward to talking nuts and bolts of science and beer bitterness, I hope next week. In the meantime, let's go ahead and set our course for Belgium. Chris Colby recently took a trip to one of the great beer destinations of the world. I've asked him to give us some highlights of his trip, and you can check out your Basic Brewing iPhone or Android app for multimedia extras that you can follow along. I put in a PDF with photos of the trip, or you can check out the links in the description of this episode on basicbrewingradio.com to download a PDF of photos of Chris's trip so that you can follow along. Now, beware, you may get thirsty. Well, Chris Colby, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio, and welcome back to the good old USA.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me on the show.
Now, I'm having you on because I've been seeing all these cool photos on Facebook that you had a little trip recently, and I thought it would be a cool idea for you to share your voyage. Or I guess it's not you didn't take a ship, so I guess it's not a voyage, right? It's
yeah, we went by airplane.
To share your trip over into one of the lands of great beer. So how did this trip come about, and how did you get so lucky to go?
Well, many years ago, I'm not sure how many, at BYO, we were just sitting around talking, and Brad, the publisher, was talking about the new Belgium brewery in Colorado. And apparently, when employees there reach the 10-year mark, 10 years of employment at New Belgium, they get a free trip to Belgium. And at that time, there was sort of no danger of anyone at BYO having worked for 10 years. And Brad said, it'd be neat if we would do something like that. And so later this year, someone reminded him of that because a couple of us have worked there for 10 years now. And he was like, oh, yeah. And anyway, he did some research and went and lined up a bunch of brewery tours for us and beer cafes and whatnot, and took it was going to be three of us, but it ended up just being me and Kiev, who is our advertising director. We went to Brussels and then the Brussels area for a week.
Wow. That people do beer tours like this and charge for it. You now that you're an experienced traveler in that area of the world, maybe you could set up a little travel agency.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, I'm completely unsuited to do that, but I don't know if most people would go on a tour with just like a fat, grouchy guy.
Ask my family.
Yeah.
Well, to help with my mood while I'm watching you enjoy yourself and the other side of the world, I'm having a homebrewed Belgian style ale, so that there is at least a little homebrew content in this show. I'm calling it a Belgian amber, and it is 10 pounds of Belgian pills, 4 pounds of malted wheat, 1 pound of amber candy syrup, added at 30 minutes into the boil, and 1.5 ounces of Styrian Goldings at 60 minutes, with White Labs 500, which is, I believe, is the Trappist ale yeast, and I did a 2-liter starter on that. Starting gravity of 1063 and an ABV of 7.3%. So I'll be sipping on this during your presentation. So where do you want to start? Oh, by the way, if you are listening to this on the iPhone, the Basic Brewing iPhone or Android app, if you click on the Extras button, you will see this presentation as a PDF, and you can follow along. Or if you go to basicbrewingradio.com and look at the description of this episode, I will put a link to a PDF of this slideshow. And none of you, or probably very few of you out there, are young or old enough to remember the little slideshows that we used to see in grade school and junior high, the little film strips. Do you remember those, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
You would one lucky person, usually the geekiest guy in the class, usually me, would get to sit by the little film strip projector, and every time the soundtrack, which was on cassette, would go bong, you'd hit the next slide button. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to, every time we want you to switch to the next slide, I'll make a goofy sound.
Is it going to be the sound of a beer opening?
I don't know. Or maybe I'll just go bong. It'll be the sound of bong on the show. And don't get any ideas. So, okay. Well, where do you want to start? This is, we're looking at slide number 1, and it's you standing outside of what looks to be the Cantillon Brewery. Is that right?
That, in fact, is the Cantillon Brewery. Right. We got on a plane. Eventually, we had a bunch of flight cancellations and whatever, but eventually we got to Brussels, and we went straight from the airport to the Cantillon Brewery. And so the first picture is Kiev and I standing outside Cantillon, and this was the one time we remembered to go all corporate, and we held up the little Brew Your Own issue. And yeah, Cantillon was the first brewery we went to there. They're a very famous lambic brewing brewery. They make sour beers. If you go to the next slide,
bong.
Here's a picture of their barrel room. And it was pretty neat. The Cantillon Brewery is fairly old, opened around the beginning of the 1900s. A lot of their equipment there is very old. And also because they brew spontaneously fermented lambic beers, they have this idea that they want to keep all the spider webs around there intact because they think they may hold trace amounts of various microorganisms that will contaminate their beer and sour it to the right, consistency. So it's sort of 100%, 180 degrees from what every other brewery in the world does. They've got a certain amount of, they want their brewery to start growing some funk in it. And after 100 years, they've been successful. Probably the most famous part of the brewery is their cool ship. They, after they boil the wort, they pump it up to a cool ship in the attic, which is just a square vessel that's very shallow and open. And they actually have louvers on the side of the brewery to let in the air. They only brew in the fall because that's when they think that the air has the right sort of biota. And it's kind of interesting. For some reason, I'd always thought of Cantillon as like out in the country or whatever, and country air wafting through it. But it's in like this crappy part of Brussels, essentially. So, like, I guess Peugeot diesel fumes are part of the mystique or something. But anyway, They then ferment stuff in barrels, and this is a slide of the barrel room. If you go to the next slide, they eventually bottle the beer. This is pictures of their goose. The goose, for example, is a blend of 3 different lambics, and that gets bottle conditioned, warm, so that carbonation develops, and that's essentially what they do at Candion. If you have Jeff Sparrow's book, Wild Brews, goes over lambic brewing in general, and of course BYO has published stories on lambic brewing before. But that's the basic idea: is that the beer it's not only has brewer's yeast in it, but has microorganisms that sour it. On the next slide,
Boom.
when we first arranged to go take the tour there, we were a little disappointed because the brewer Jean Van Roy was on vacation, but we thought, oh well, we'll go anyway and take the tour. Turns out this guy here is Jean-Pierre Van Roy. It's his father. He was a brewer there from '69 till just recently, essentially. So it was great to talk to him. He was very excited. Was happy to talk about beer and brewing, and our language difficulties were fairly minimal. We were lucky actually on the whole trip that it was funny. We went to their country and we don't speak a word of their language, and yet everyone kept apologizing to us for not speaking English well, and we were like, no, don't don't do that. We're sorry that we don't speak Flemish or French or anything other than American English. And anyway, so we tasted all the normal Canyon beers. We tasted their Gouza and a Creek and a Framboise or whatever. But one of the interesting things is they're making an apricot beer coming up. And we got to taste the first year sample of that. It was from lambic, made last year or a year before on the trip. And then just recently they added the apricots to it. And their assistant brewer came over and got a little pitcher and drained some out of one of the barrels. And we got to taste it. It was really interesting. Very
apricot-y?
Very apricot-y. Had in particular, it tasted like the skins of apricots had that kind of consistency taste, and it was that'll be very interesting. It was still, given that it was in young lambic, it was still kind of sweet, but he said that would be expected to dry down with time.
So after a year fermenting in the barrel, that's when they added the fruit.
Yeah.
So did you get any indication of whether they pureed the fruit or whether they added it in slices or anything like that?
We didn't. We were there in the summer, not during the brew season, so we didn't get to like watch them brew or whatever. I think what they do is I think they just kind of mash the fruit up a little bit and dump it in. From the pictures on the wall, they used fruit, not like cans of puree or anything.
Right.
And but I guess, and I didn't ask this specific question, but I think they just sort of macerate it lightly, crush it up a bit.
Mm-hmm. It'd be interesting if the fruit itself added any kind of extra little natural bugs to the equation. Oh,
I'm sure it does. I mean, the outside of fruit is of course populated by all sorts of things that like sugar, and mostly the skin. If it's unbroken, will keep that out. But if it gets broken, fruit starts to rot away because it's got lactobacillus on the outside and of course yeast on the outside.
Did you taste anything that was too funky for you there at that brewery?
No, Canyon is awesome. I love like everything that I've ever tasted from there. There's I like beers that are really sour. For some people at Canyon, some of the products, because they ferment things very dry and very sour. And so for some people, Canyon beers are a little too much for them, but I loved it. That was I don't know, one of my highlights of going to Belgium, along with all the others.
Yeah, and that's
hard to pick one out given all the places we went.
And that was your first
was a great
stop.
Start. Yeah, we hadn't even checked into the hotel at this point, and we're already, the historic brewer from Canyon is giving us, barrel samples of a new beer they're trying out. I'm like, we've been in Belgium like an hour. And so I'm like, I like this place already.
It's good to be the editor.
It's good to be editor. Yeah. And that evening, went to this place called Mater Lambic, which is just a cafe. It's like a brand new Lambic cafe. Very nice. They also had other beers besides Lambic. And we went to dinner at some place called Spinnekopke, which is like in the spider web or something like that. And they featured beer cuisine. And so I had like rabbit in goose sauce, which was really good.
Wow.
And so anyway, we woke up at like the crack of dawn the next morning and headed to, if we go to the next slide,
Boom.
It's the De Boysen Brewery. De Boysen brews a beer called Busch, Bush. But due to legal conflicts with another Belgian brewery, Anheuser-Busch InBev, they aren't allowed to sell their beer in the United States under Busch, and so here it's called Scaldus. And if you ever had it, it's a like 12% alcohol amber Belgian ale, very very good. And this was De Boysen is actually the oldest brewery in Wallonia, which is a region of Belgium, and so their Busch beer is sort of their main brand. They don't put out any beers that are called De Boysen anything. But they recently introduced a new beer called Cuvée de Troll, which was like a lower alcohol, which in Belgium meant it was 7%. Beer, essentially to try to get young people to drink beer. And they were also doing some other things. Like if you go to the next slide,
Boom.
Here's a picture of the guy who gave us a tour. And this is a barrel room there where they're aging Busch beer in... these are wine barrels, red wine barrels that have been used once. And they also had some big neutral oak casks. And they age Busch in both of those. And then they blend it together to make what they call Busch Premier. And I'm not sure if that's available in the States, but if so, to be called Scaldus Premier. And anyway, this is him giving us samples right out of the barrel. And it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, and we're drinking like 12% wine soaked beer samples. And so yeah, it was a great start to the day. And but that beer was amazing. Like the raw oaked one was like, I mean, it would be too much to have more than a couple sips of, but it was just incredibly complex. And then they blend that back with some of the neutral and for the final beer. And I've got one more slide, just kind of interesting. This shows little 30-liter kegs. Those were apparently big because we saw those in many, many breweries. I don't work in a bar or anything, but I don't see that size keg in the United States very much. And another funny thing was that a lot of breweries use 20-liter kegs, just flat-out corny kegs. The top was different. It had the commercial assembly on the top, but it was the same shape and volume as a regular Cornelius keg here. So that brewery is interesting. De Boysen, they made a couple other beers. They made a beer that they call a blonde, which is like a triple. They made the Cuvée de Troll. They made a couple others, and we sampled like all of them at 10 in the morning. So that was a good start to that day. And so anyway, we went from the oldest brewery in Wallonia to, if you go to the next slide, one of the newest breweries in Belgium. Is the brewery Dilwins. They've been open for 5 years, but they had just moved in May into this new facility, and we came and visited them in July. And this is an exterior shot here, and it's incredible. This place is just like polished stainless steel everywhere. If you go to the next slide, it shows their brew house, which is, as you can see, all nice shiny stainless and computer controlled and all that. And the name Vickers there is the name of their beer brand. The guy who who bought the brewery. His name was Victor Dilwins. He's like the owner. His daughter is the brewmaster. He's got another daughter that makes chocolates that they sell there. And anyway, Karis is like a cavity, and he was a guy that made dentures for a living, and so he put his name and Karis together and came up with Vicaris. And if you look, the symbol for his brewery it's a horse, and it's got 4 young women on it, and he's got 4 daughters, and so it's that's that. And then here's actually a picture of him pouring beers for us. This guy won the Belgian national homebrew contest at least once. So he started out as a home brewer. I guess made enough money buying dentures that he could, buy a brewery eventually, and now he's got his own brewery. The Vicaris beers are. He was working right now with an importer in the United States to try to get those here, so those might show up pretty soon. They were all very good, very, very well made. There was one that was. There was one that he called Vicardin that I thought was excellent. It was the Vicaris triple that he made, blended with Girardin Goose. Girardin is another brewery, but apparently when he brews a batch, he just calls up. I forget the guy's first name. I think it's Paul Girardin. Let's say it's Paul Girardin. Whoever Mr. Girardin's name is. And just says send over a tanker of goose. They bring it, and he blends it with his triple. And apparently, in Belgium, it's called Vicardin Vicardin triple goose. But in the United States, they're going to call it Vicaris, so that all the beers are named Vicaris, and then triple plus goose, because the United States importers thought that people would say, there's no such thing as a triple goose, and so triple plus, that gives the idea that it's a blend of beers. Anyway, all those beers are good, but the triple plus goose was fantastic.
Now, I take it that since they have this brand new state-of-the-art stainless steel system, that they don't have open fermentation in the louvers and all that.
No, they have. It's just flat out like what a modern brewery would be in the U.S.
So where do they get their yeast? I mean, I assume that it's like a legacy yeast from some of the breweries around them.
I'm not sure. I mean, they get Wyeast and White Labs and stuff like that over there too. I didn't ask him where he got his yeast from.
It would be kind of I don't know if ironic is appropriate, but it might be ironic if they ordered their yeast from a company in the United States. Where the origin of the yeast came from Belgium.
Yeah. Back and forth across the ocean. I mean, it happens. We did, and I'll talk about it just a little bit later, we did visit a brew, what do I want to say? A homebrew shop in Belgium, and they carry all the American products.
Huh.
So anyway, that's the Vicaris. If we go on to the next slide.
Bong.
Our next stop was the DuPont Brewery, brewers of Monet and Saison DuPont. Unfortunately, the brewer there was gone too. We sort of ended up touring Belgium in the month when everyone in Belgium goes on vacation. So we didn't get a tour of DuPont, but we did. This is Le Cave's DuPont, their tap room right across the street, and we did get to go over there, drink some Saison DuPont. It was just fresh, just incredible. We had lunch there, and it was really good.
Wow.
I would have loved to have toured the DuPont Brewery, but there was, the only English-speaking guy, and the brewer was on vacation. so I had to settle for just
drinking the
drinking
beer.
Fresh DuPont beer across the street from the brewery.
Well, life is rough.
I'll take it. Okay. Let's see. Later that day, if we go to the next slide, here's me and Kiev again at the Head Anchor Brewery. This is their dining room or whatever. Head Anchor makes Guden Carolus beers. Those have some availability in the United States, And basically, if you go to the next slide.
Well, let's describe what's on the slide here. We have you in Kiev, and the view out the window is are those stacks of kegs?
Yes, those are stacks of I believe those are stacks of cases of 750 ml bottles or 75 centiliter bottles
with a brick smokestack there, and
yep.
What did you have in that Jethro bowl in front of you? I mean, that's like what Jethro ate his breakfast out of. What? That's quite the bowl.
I forget exactly what it was. I think it was noodles and curry and mussels, if I remember right.
Wow.
It was something. Everything we ate there was just fantastic. Brad picked good restaurants for us, but I don't specifically remember that one.
The bowl's bigger than your head.
Yeah. This was after a day of when we started drinking 12% beers at like 9 o'clock in the morning. So like my memory of that evening is not perhaps as sharp as it should have been. But anyway, that's us eating in our cafe. It was really good. And we stayed in, if you click to the next slide, Hotel Carolus, which is the whole, if you see that wall, the wall extends around the brewery, around the place where they have the cafe and everything, and there's a little hotel there that you can stay at, and you're actually at the brewery.
Wow.
And it was weird because in the little courtyard between the hotel and the cafe was where you see all those crates and crates of bottles. It was like you could have got up in the middle of the night and just walked out of your hotel room and just like grabbed, and drank like however many bottles of beer you wanted.
Theoretically.
And after, as great as that sounds, after a day of drinking 12% beer, I was sort of like, I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I need to be arrested for stealing Belgian beer on my second day here. Thanks.
Cool.
That was also another, like, I don't have a picture of this, but another sort of interesting experience we had in Belgium was we were walking around Brussels one night, and Kiev said, "Oh, that archway over there looks kind of interesting," and it had some carvings on it. And we're like, "Oh, that does look interesting." And we sort of looked down the alley, and there was a sign for Duvel, and we're like, "Oh, that sounds interesting too." And so we walk down the alleyway and go to this there's this little beer bar down there, and we sit down, and it's got stained glass windows, and it's got all sorts of old junk on the walls, and really cool little interesting pub. And we open the beer menu. On the first page they have Westy 12.
Oh.
And the thing with West Later 12 is that if you've ever read those beer rankings on Rate Beer and Beer Advocate and all those places, it always ranks either as the best beer or one of the best beers. And but you can only buy the case at the brewery, and you need to sign something saying that you're not going to resell it. Well, obviously, we ended up at a cafe where someone didn't pay too much attention to that. That's we got. It was €10 a piece for a bottle, but it was good beer. It was really good beer, in fact. And so that was our sort of Kiev just liked a stone carving somewhere, and it led us to Gray Market Westy 12.
Awesome.
Yeah. Another cool place, if we go to the next slide.
Bong.
This is, I'm probably not going to pronounce this anywhere close to right, but it's like Inding Spoitenden Duvel. This is a little beer cafe just north, I believe, of Brussels. It's in that area. It's in a town called Turnhout. And this place was great. We went there just for the afternoon, just to have a couple beers. And just an excellent little beer cafe. It had a very big menu for the size of the place. They had like everywhere in Belgium, when you ordered the beer, it came in the, if you ordered a Duvel, it came in a Duvel glass. If you ordered a Guden Carolus, it came in a Guden Carolus glass. So they had just an insane amount of glassware somewhere in that place. I don't know even where you could store it all. Just a great beer list, and just a great little place to hang out. That was really really fun. And then let's see, that night I I'm skipping West Mall for now because we went to West Mall this day, but I'm gonna do that last because that was the thing I think was coolest. If we skip to the next one, this is a brewery called Castle Turdolin. It's a brewery inside a castle, and the first picture here is just a picture of one of their tanks, but above it there's a cornerstone, and that was from the original castle back in the 1600s. The castle, parts of it have burned down, and the Nazis have burned part of it down in World War II, and parts have been rebuilt. But this the space where the brewery has they've reclaimed some of the historical materials and rebuilt it, and then they've stuck a nice modern brewery in there. And they also, this place has it's sort of like a big walled compound, and they have a beer garden in the middle, which is really nice, to sit out in the sun, which in Belgium meant it was like 65 degrees rather than, if it had been here in Texas, it would 110 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was great to sit out in the sun, have some beers, and then we stayed there at the castle. They have a bed and breakfast kind of thing. And if you go to the next slide, there's where we stayed one night in Belgium.
Wow.
In a castle. It's like not too shabby.
So did you stay at the top of the turret there and let your hair dangle out the side? And
I didn't. we went to the top of the turret. The woman who owned the castle was incredibly nice. She actually, that night, she was like, "Well, you guys probably want to go drink some beer." And we're like, "Yes." And she's like, I'll drive you to where you want to go, so you don't have to worry about drinking and driving.
What?
Yeah, well, thank you. And we went to this place that it was called something like Bitterschüsse or something. It translated to bittersweet, and it was a guy who he made beer cuisine essentially and paired it with beers, and we had like this 4-course dinner where every course I think beer was usually in there somehow, but there was a specific beer pairing, and it was really nice. And then we stayed in the castle. We stayed in the right hand part of there where it was sort of, you see it's overgrown with some sort of vine.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not too shabby.
Wow.
Let's see the next picture. I think this picture is out of order from the when we went there, but this is just a picture of Cafe Delirium, beer cafe. We went there, and they have like a little menu on the table when you get there. It's mostly new stuff, but you can go up at the bar and ask for the full menu, and the full menu is literally a catalog.
Ugh.
And so we got this catalog, and I looked on the front and it said 2004, and I thought, well, haven't they published a new beer catalog in however many years? And then I realized, no, 2004 was how many beers they had available, because it's just smaller below. It said 2010, 2011, beer menu, and I was like, oh my god. And they had. They weren't. We did find that they had a couple beers that they weren't in stock, but they had a lot of stuff, and it was interesting. This place was. There were a lot of young people there. In fact, it was almost all young people, and it was very loud compared to some of the other places we went were sort of more quiet, maybe catering to a little bit older clientele. This place had a lot of, this was in downtown Brussels, and just had a lot of younger people in it. And they have an upstairs to this. There's a main floor that just kind of has, I don't know, not a ton of beers on it. The basement has the place where you can get 2004 different beers, but they have an upstairs like a loft or whatever that specializes in hoppy American style beers.
Oh,
so
were there craft brands that we would recognize up there?
I don't know. I didn't go up there.
Oh. You can get hoppy beers here.
I live in America, so I don't need to go to Belgium and go upstairs in the Delirium Cafe to find it.
Good point.
A hoppy beer when there's huge, punishingly alcoholic Belgian beers downstairs.
See, the Delirium Cafe. I'm just surprised that the sidewalk out front isn't littered with bodies, or at least puddles. Of one kind and another.
People did. I didn't see a lot of. the beer culture there is very vibrant. There's there's beer cafes all over. Every place serves good beer. And I mean, there's bad beer there too. But yeah, I actually there's this beer there called Jupiler, which is just like Budweiser essentially, or Miller's or Coors or whatever. And I brought my wife back a can of that just as a joke. And, I mean, I brought her some good stuff too, but I was like, "This is the most popular beer in Belgium," and she was like, "Oh, thanks."
Cut out the middleman and just pour that down the toilet.
Yeah. I'm assuming it's probably going to be sitting in the fridge when I get back to Boston next, and I'll be able to enjoy it because I don't think she's attacked that yet. Especially there's I gave her a bottle of Cantillon and some of the Turdolen Castle beers. And we actually, when I got back, we watched the movie In Bruges and drank Belgian beers while we did. So that was a fun evening.
So who do we have next? What's the next slide? Pong.
This is the brewer at Brewery Vapeur. Vapeur means steam or whatever. This is a very old brewery that has a steam engine that powers various aspects of, various mechanical devices at the brewery. And it's, as far as anyone knows, this is the only steam-powered brewery left in the world. A lot of breweries have used steam as heating for their jackets on their on their hot liquor tank or on their kettle and stuff. But this is where steam is used as powering for mechanical devices in the brewery, and that's the brewer there. This was I was on good behavior when I was in Belgium. I wasn't the the ugly American or whatever. But my one sort of faux pas was we were trying one of their beers, and if you look, you can't really see from these pictures, but the brewery wasn't the cleanest brewery in the world. Let's put it that way. And we were trying one of their beers, and it was a big alcoholic amber beer, very nice, but it had a definite sour note to it. It was tart, but it was good. And given that we'd been to Cantillon, and we've there are other breweries that do sour beers in Belgium, I assumed that was intentional. And I asked the brewer how he developed the sourness in his beers, and he got kind of flustered and, "Oh, they're not supposed to be sour." Oops. I'm sorry. I meant, how did you not get the sour in your beers?
How'd you get this lovely butterscotch flavor in your?
Yeah. No, it didn't have butterscotch in it, but yeah. So that was my one,
well, that's pretty good.
Moment.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, for me especially.
And then the next photo is of the machine itself.
The actual steam engine, yeah.
And there's a guy sticking his nose dangerously close to the working parts.
Kiev and Brad and I were saying, man, if anyone from OSHA were ever to come here,
that was my thought.
Have a heart attack on the spot.
Yeah,
because there's this old steam engine just running right there next to it,
and a stack of fingers next to that belt. There's a giant open, probably leather belt going between these pulleys and such.
Oh, there sure is, and there's hot pipes carrying hot water that you walk right by, and I don't know, it's OSHA would just. The OSHA inspector would probably just keel over of a heart attack right there. But it was great. I know it's obviously back in the old days they didn't have all those protections for
right.
They could get someone else with fingers if if the new guy didn't work out.
Yeah, some old guy, somebody who's like 35.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've sent me a video of that, and I'm going to try to link that on the site and through the app as well, and probably put that on the Facebook page too.
Yeah, the part I shows the steam engine turning and it moving the crank on the ceiling, and in that case it was operating. I think it was a pump, but the steam power also operated the mash mixer on the first floor, and that was pretty cool to see too. Next picture, just quickly, there's the mash tun, the mash mixer, and the funnel coming down into it. The big wooden chute is the where the grain comes down and it's mixed with water there and goes into the mash tun.
And it's a wooden mash tun.
Yeah, the inside of the mash tun is carbon steel, and the outside is staves from old big wine barrels just sort of wrapped around there for heat conservation.
Huh.
As I said before, if we go to the next slide, 90, we went to a homebrew shop. Here's just a picture of the brewing machine that homebrew shop sells. That was like the first thing you walk in, and there it is. Like, wow, pretty fancy.
Yeah, it's a big stainless steel contraption, 2 containers, and a
Yep.
big old control panel in the middle.
Yeah, and they have this is the hot side of the brewery, and then they also sell another roly-poly thing like that with 2 vessels that are for fermentation.
Wow.
If we click to the next one, just couldn't resist showing some Belgian mussels.
With a Coca-Cola in the background. How'd that get in there?
That was what we get to lunch, and this is like our 3rd day of just drinking beer all day. And I usually in the morning, I have a Coca-Cola, and I hadn't had a Coca-Cola for days. And so they go around the table and everyone's ordering, this beer, that beer, or whatever. And I say, I'll have a Coke. And everyone looks at me like, what are you, high? Are you on drugs or something? I was like, I just need something that doesn't have 12% alcohol in it once this week. And after that, I went back and had some nice Belgian beers. But yeah, I had a Coke. And actually, if you look, it's covered up by a napkin, but there's a red colored beer there. That's what's the brewery? One of the lambic breweries there, and I can't remember the name now, is they have a beer that you're supposed to serve on ice. It's like a mix of creek and fruit juices. It's sort of like it's like a beer for girls, or
Careful.
it is. I know, I'm just saying, but which is okay because the person who ordered it was female. So
Chris's views do not reflect those of Basic Brewing Radio or its member stations or lackeys or whatever. So who's next? Bong.
Okay, so that up to this point we've covered everything except for what for me was the highlight of my tour. So I saved that for last, and that's the Westmalle Brewery. If you click to the next one, this guy is Philippe Von Asch. He's the director of brewing operations at Westmalle. Westmalle is a Trappist brewery. The brewery is within the walls of a Trappist abbey. The abbey building itself is separate from the brewery, but it's within the sort of confines of the compound or whatever. And he's the head of brewing operations there.
Oh wow!
And anyway, let's see. If you click to the next one, here's the brew house at Westmalle. Just copper. This beautiful looking brew house. Westmalle brews 3 beers. They brew Westmalle Triple, Westmalle Double, and they also brew Westmalle Extra, which is like a quote unquote single beer. And so anyway, this is a brew house that picture of Philippe was in front of the mash lauter kettle, although I think they use a mash filter now. His English was pretty good, but we were having some trouble communicating. And I think he was also sort of interested in not telling us every last thing. So we were asking some pretty prying questions about stuff. Click to the next slide. Here's the lab at Westmalle. Just for quality control and stuff. Kind of interesting. The next slide shows their fermenters. And behind these tiles, they have the big square fermenters. And if you look, you can see there's a big orange tube in the forefront, and also some ones in the background that are spilling out krausen from a fermentation onto the ground. When we were there, they had got a brand new gigantic cylindrical conical fermenter that they were running tests on to see if they could brew their beers in a different shaped fermenter and still have the same flavor. But these are the ones that they use for fermentation. They've also got a similar amount of tanks for lagering. They cool down the beers and lager them after they're brewed.
So do they have any results on the fermenter shape tests?
Those were still ongoing when I got the impression from what he said that they weren't, from what's come out of the fermenter, they weren't willing to bottle it and sell it as Westmalle beer yet. But I'm sure they'll figure out what they need to do in short order.
They can always sell it as Always Save
Yeah.
Belgian beer if they don't like it. Next, you're up high.
Next, this is the bottling line there. When we talked with Philippe at first, it's funny, we were in a little office in the on the brewery side, and he was telling us about the brewery, and one of the things about Westmalle is that it's a Trappist brewery, and so they sell their beer. The profits they get go towards maintaining the abbey, and the rest they give away to charity. And one of the things about the brewery is the monks have said that at the size we're at now, we're not going to expand. And at the time we're sitting in this little room and talking to him, and I'm sort of thinking on the back there's some monks with cappers, topping up the beers. Then we get to the bottom line, and it's like this football stadium sized cavernous space with like robots everywhere. You saw like a couple people in this huge place, and everywhere else robots are packaging everything up. And it was really very modern and very impressive, and very cool, but a little different from what I expected when the monks wanted to keep things small. It's a different idea. All right, I guess they never said small; they said constant. We click to the next slide. Here's the quote unquote ripening room. This is warm conditioning room for bottle conditioning. Once the beers are bottled, they sit there and develop their carbonation, and they'll test some of them occasionally. And when the process has gotten to where the beers are conditioned, then they'll go out and sell them. A lot of beer in that room. That's just like, if I would have panned left and take another picture, there was another, stacks and stacks of cases of the same amount.
To give you an idea, it's kind of like the end scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they're putting the Ark in the archives there, and with all the boxes.
Yeah, I had, when we went to Du Bois, and we went to a room like this too, just tons and tons of beer, and here at Westmalle, just tons and tons of beer. I just haven't seen that quantity of beer in one place in a long time. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of beer. Let's see. The next slide. There's the Abbey itself. We weren't allowed in there for various reasons. I don't know if they've personally done any background checks on me, but
they know you probably would have shouted something inappropriate during quiet time.
Yeah, there's 30 monks live there right now, down from I guess 100. So I guess these monks aren't we'll take a vow of poverty and live in abject condition. These are more like, no, we'll have this huge mansion next to a brewery. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a nice looking place.
Yeah, not too shabby.
And next,
Cafe Trappistin. This is right across the road. This is the cafe that's open to everyone. The tour we got of the Westmalle Brewery actually is not open to the public. We had to we contacted Philippe Von Asch, and as we find out later, he actually called people in the United States and checked out us before consenting to give us a tour.
Is this a real magazine?
Yeah, exactly. Brew Your Own. Never heard of it. But the cafe is public. You can go there and get the beers there. It's very good lunch specials and stuff like that. And the final shot here is, as I said before, Westmalle makes 3 beers: the Westmalle Triple, Double, and the Extra. The Triple and Double are the ones that they sell everywhere, but the Extra, which is shown here, is only brewed for the brothers and workers at the brewery and guests of the brewery. And so we got to try a Westmalle Extra.
Wow.
And I believe they also sell it by the case if you drive up to the brewery on some certain day and know the password and stuff like that. But it's
password is eBay.
Yeah. Well, he did say some Italians showed up recently and bought like 5 cases. They I guess they must have a 1 case limit because he said 5 of them showed up and we sold them 1 case of extra each. So,
Hmm.
but anyway, this is an interesting beer. The it was just light, pale in color, fairly hoppy, uh, especially compared to a lot of other Belgian beers, which were tended to be balanced more towards, for the American palate, balanced towards the sweetness end of them. This was a sort of low gravity. I think this is only like 4.5% alcohol, pale, like lightly hoppy beer, but it's very nice.
Hmm.
And the double is a standard double there. Sort of a darker, heavier beer. And the triple, Westmalle was the first brewery to brew a triple. Those are the light in color, but very strong. 7, 8, 9%, depending. Different breweries brew it to different strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And their triple is excellent too. And it was interesting when we went to Belgium. The doubles and triples are popular there. You see that, at least in the beer places that cater towards good beer, you saw a lot of beers labeled double and triple. We didn't see a lot of, before I was going there, I tended to think of Belgian beer and I think of Saison a lot. I think of wit beer. We didn't see, you could find them on the menu, but they weren't really, there weren't a ton of them. And the weirdest thing at all, most beers were not labeled with any kind of reference to a beer style. Like in the States, everything is called, brewery name pale ale or brewery name porter or,
right.
Something like that. In Belgium, everything was the brand name, which didn't always, of course, there was a lot of breweries that they're the brewery, but then they had their brand name, which was different. Like the Du Bois Brewery made Bush beer, so it'd be Bush, and like their main beer is sometimes called Bush Amber, just because it's amber in color. And so a lot of times the only description on a Belgian beer is the brand, and then a lot of times a color like golden or amber or blonde or something like that, and an alcohol level. And actually, a couple of the brewers and beer people there were very adamant that that each beer is like its own thing. They don't try to fit their beers into beer styles, and they just every brewery, and a lot of these breweries, most of these breweries, except for the one that was open for only a couple months that we visited, the rest of them, have been around forever. So they weren't interested in trying to brew something that fit into what modern people have thought of as styles. They've got their one idea. Here's their beer they're brewing, and they're going to do that. Peter
Buchart from New Belgium, when we interviewed him, I said something about wanting to know how to brew the styles of beer that he brewed, and he threatened to choke me. So
nice.
Yeah. So he said, I don't make styles of beer. I make art and 10 minutes of pleasure, and so they're not much for the pigeonholes over there, I guess.
Yeah. No, they very much weren't. And even the beer menus, like a lot of times in the United States, beer menus at places where they have a more extensive list have it broken down by, the styles or whatever. But here it was just, by brewery name or brand name.
Wow. Well, Chris, I'm extremely jealous. And I hope I hope it's not the 10th anniversary of Basic Brewing Radio, where we, get to go over there and do something similar to what you guys have done. But you're just scratching the surface, right? I mean, there's a ton of other stuff to see over there.
Oh yeah, we were there for a week, and I mean, even how long I've babbled right now, I haven't told you everything we've done. Like, I mean, we went to Mort Sabit one night, and we we went to a couple different beer cafes, like restaurants that serve beer, and as part of their dinner, and everywhere we went, there was, you could see arrows for a brewery that you might have even heard of. A lot of the beer actually that is made in Belgium, I was surprised that I recognized so much of it, and a lot of it's available in the States. And from the breweries we talked to too, a lot of Belgian brewers, they're keen to get their stuff selling in the United States because it's a market that's expanding. Whereas Belgian beer market itself, it's big, and there's an established beer culture there, but the popularity there is waning a bit. And although not by waning, it might mean maybe they only drink beer 4 times a day now rather than 5. there's definitely everywhere you went, definitely had you either saw a sign for Duvel or Jupiler or Westmalle because we were in that area, or Bush, or you saw the signs for all the different things all over. I mean, we were driving just randomly from place to place, and we must have been in the town where Duvel was brewed, because there was a roundabout, and right in the middle of the roundabout are these 2 big copper like mash kettles. And one said Duvel on the side, and it's like, you don't really see just random brewing equipment, enshrined at the side of the road in the United States too much. Something we need to work on, I think.
Mainly because it would get swiped and either melted down for scrap or hooked up to somebody's brewing setup in their garage, I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully the latter and not the former. Well, this has been fun, Chris. I hope everybody will download the pictures and play along with us as you describe it. So I look forward to next time, and I look forward to maybe taking the trip myself.
If you need a tour guide, I'll
I'll let you know.
I'll work cheap.
Well, thanks again to Chris. That was fun. Not nearly as fun as going there myself, but fun to look and see what could be the possibilities. If you're jogging or driving or otherwise unable to see the photos that Chris shot, be sure to check those out when you get to a place where you can download them and view them. I'm looking forward to tracing his steps one day. I hope. And by the way, you can get a free issue of Brew Your Own magazine through the banner ad on our site. And if you decide to subscribe after reading that issue, you'll be helping to support this show. And we appreciate everybody who has done that, and a bunch of you have. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com. or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kids. And our brewers' logbooks, just a stubborn few, are left on the shelf. You can find all that on our site. We got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store, too. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are The Art of Steampunk, Extraordinary Devices and Ingenious Contraptions from the Leading Artists of the Steampunk Movement, and Natural Pumpkin Pie Flavor. Fall's a-coming. Hurry up, fall. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping, and we greatly appreciate your support. That's all until next time. Till then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.